AITA for telling my uncle to stop gifting my daughter extravagant trips. I am not the original poster. That is you, new user 9461. They posted in r, am I the asshole? Mood spoiler. Weird. But a happy ending. Less than. Original post. October 23, 2023. So, a little backstory. When my sisters and I were kids, every year for our birthdays and Christmas my uncle would give us cards. Inside those cards would be a printed out picture of some place, i.e. local theme parks, the zoo, aquarium, museums, any place a kid would love to go. After we opened them, he would tell us that we're going to that place. He would say things like, "It's gonna be the best trip of your life." That would obviously make us very excited. Here's the thing. We never went on any of those trips. We never went to any of those places. As a young kid, it would be disappointing, but after a while I started expecting it and just going along with it. I don't hold any animosity towards him at all, obviously. As an adult now, I understand he did that because he didn't have the means to buy us gifts. Here's where I'm starting to have a little bit of an issue with it. My daughter's 5th birthday was last week. My uncle gave her a card. She opened it to find a printed out picture of a theme park about 2 hours away from our house. And he promised her a fun weekend away. He promised her things like a giant hotel room with a swimming pool, all the snacks she could ever want, and tickets to every show she wants to see at the park. She was over the moon. For the past week, my daughter has talked non-stop about this trip. She keeps telling me how excited she is and how excited her whole class at school is for her. It breaks my heart to look at that smile on her face knowing it's not gonna happen. I remember how disappointing it was for me. And I don't want her to go through that. So, I texted my uncle. Here's what the message said. "Hi. Your message in daughter's name. Card was so beautiful. Do you think next time you could leave out the promise of an extravagant trip? The thought and gesture is amazing. However, I never know what to say when she asks me when this trip will be. She absolutely loves spending time with you, so I know the promise of even a nice lunch together would make her so happy." He never responded, but my aunt told me he was upset. She said something like he was offended that I implied the only thing he could afford was a nice lunch. I didn't mean it like that at all. I just wanted him to understand that she loves him and wants to spend time with him, and he doesn't need to promise impossible things to make that happen. But I can see why he interpreted it the way he did. And that's where I'm wondering if I'm the asshole. This has been an unspoken thing in my family for so many years, so I'm now wondering if I should've just kept it that way. I just can't stand the thought of my little girl getting disappointed so many times. My sisters and my mom agree with me. My mom even said she wished she stopped it when we were kids. So, AITA for telling my uncle to stop gifting my daughter extravagant trips? Oop is voted NTA. Update post. October 26, 2023. 3 days later. Thanks to everyone for your feedback on my last post. A lot of people asked me why I was being so nice to my uncle, and honestly, I think I underestimated how weird it was because it's been so normalized in my family. I didn't want to cause drama, so I went about it as non-confrontational as possible. I agree now I should have been more direct. Another concern a lot of you had was that I allowed this to happen to my daughter previously. That is not true. This is the first time he promised her one of his trips. That's why I decided to say something, so this doesn't become a recurring thing. Here's the update. I tried to call my uncle twice, but he didn't answer. I got through to my aunt and explained everything to her. How many times he did this to my siblings and I, and how often we were disappointed. I told her my daughter was so excited and that if they were actually planning to take her on this trip, I would apologize. She didn't take that well. She told me I was creating unnecessary drama and that my daughter and I are acting entitled to expect them to drop everything to go on this trip. I was shocked and angry. I said, how dare you say that? She didn't imagine this trip in her mind and then expect you to take her. You promised her this trip. Her disappointment is not entitlement. I said it's not my job to make sure a grown man feels secure in himself, and it's a shame my family spent so long coddling him. I was so mad I just hung up. I don't feel any ounce of guilt for setting my boundary anymore. For everyone asking if I can take my daughter on the trip. Unfortunately, that theme park closes for the season this month. But I surprised her with something even better. After the phone call with my aunt, my partner and I decided to book a trip to Disneyland. It sounds crazy and impulsive, but we've been wanting to plan this for a while now and decided it's the perfect time. My kid is entitled to an extravagant trip. Last night, we sat her down and explained that her uncle won't be able to take her on the trip. I tried to be as honest as possible without confusing her. She was unsurprisingly upset and had a lot of questions. After we answered them all, I told her not to worry because her mom and dad are taking her somewhere instead. When she found out it was Disney, she was over the moon. She spent all day deciding which Minnie Mouse stuffy she wants to take with her. I told her to tell her class her trip got upgraded. All things considered, it's a happy ending. I know I won't always be able to protect her from disappointment, but I sure as hell will do my best. She's getting that giant hotel room she was promised. Relevant comments. I wouldn't be accepting any more cards from them at all. Don't worry. I'm not. I'm going to be checking cards of any event he comes to. It's a shame I even have to do that, but if it means protecting her from his lies, I'll do it. Quote, that family dynamic is just wild. Why has everyone just accepted it? I wish I had a good answer to this question. I have a theory though. My uncle is the boy in the family and my grandma has always treated him differently than she treats her daughters. You know, the typical self-proclaimed boy mom stuff. She thinks he's perfect. So I'm starting to believe everyone let him get away with this because they didn't want to upset my grandma. I'm sure she's pissed at me for hurting her son's feelings. Woman shrugging. Son, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash. Stinger. This is weird. You could give people birthday cards without the promise of a trip. My uncle is the boy in the family and my grandma has always treated him differently than she treats her daughters. You know, the typical self-proclaimed boy mom stuff. Maybe it's just me, but every bit of boy mom culture I've been exposed to has been bizarre and uncomfortable. Uncle is a cheapskate and he's been getting away with it his life. He breaks little kids' hearts repeatedly and doesn't give a SHT. That tells you what kind of person he is. He's upset because Oops stopped it from repeating. Called him out where other adults should have nipped it in the bud years ago. Just. Why? What was the point of the uncle giving those gifts? I'm genuinely bewildered. This is some real Scott's Tots vibes right here. Oh, look. A golden child still screwing up the family dynamic 2 generations later. Uncle thought he could get away with normalizing giving nothing to an entirely new generation. As an adult now, I understand he did that because he didn't have the means to buy us gifts. I'm sorry. What? That's not what you do when you can't afford gifts. Hurting children emotionally time after time. WTF. I'm glad Oop learned that no, this wasn't reasonable, and this absolutely should not have been normalized. Wow. Also, at least Oop ended the cycle, immediately setting boundaries for daughter. But wow, uncle should never be allowed around children if this is what he does. Edit. Formatting. I'm petty. If they aren't going to cut that uncle off, I'd start sending him pictures of things he wants and promising you'll buy them for him. And be like, oh, it has this feature. A new TV with surround sound. A new car. Something posh like a Tesla. A trip to somewhere first class, all expenses paid, etc., 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 even to say we promise you a trip to Disney. Lol. If he can't afford the trips, fine. Just give the kid a little cash and be done with it. I remember my dad promising me all sorts of stuff as a child and never delivering. My mom tried to remedy what she could, but I still felt let down. I grew up with intense trust issues that even as an adult I am still working on. It hasn't been made any easier by most of my exes making promises and never delivering. Or lying about key things. My dad has gotten better, but I just stopped expecting things. No, it would not help if he got me that Barbie dream house or Jeep for me to ride in now. Okay, this is wild. My aunt, godmother, would do the same thing to me growing up. She'd give me a card and write that we'd do all these extravagant things my parents couldn't afford. Promising a shopping spree at the Limited too. Spa days for Monty, petties. Trips to the zoo, etc. One time NSYNC concert tickets were promised. And it would never happen. I always wondered why do this. I was a nice kid and would have been happy with just a card. Why lie and get a child's hopes up? What does it mean if my BF is like this? It's equally disappointing every time. But I DK how to bring it up. Like lying about Santa on steroids with a dose of personal cruelty. My godfather was like this. He didn't promise trips, but expensive toys and tech. He's an addict. Alcohol mostly. Sometimes drugs. And flat broke. Living with his mother still. He's over 60 and can't keep a job. I'm guessing there's a similar reason this uncle can't afford the trips but somehow justifies it. For himself. Omit dirtbag aunt and uncle from Disneyland trip. Shamelessly rub in every aspect of trip on social media. Blacklist aunt and uncle from daughter's events. Lather. Rinse. Repeat. Reminds me of the Uncle Billy episode of Leave It to Beaver. He promised Wally and the Beav all sorts of extravagant presents. Beaver waited all afternoon for Uncle Billy to meet him at the sporting goods store to pick out a new fishing rod. Never showed. Turns out he used to promise Ward and his brothers all sorts of things when they were kids. Fishing trips to Mexico, etc., but never followed through. I had a relative like uncle who always promised big huge gifts, trips, next time, whenever they visited. I figured out early on that the gifts would never materialize. As did my siblings. And this is why we have trust issues. This post is mind-blowing. I don't understand how any adult enables this for this long. How do you not even tell your own daughter, your uncle is a liar, don't listen to what he says? How do you even try to reason with that?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.